The story begins with a student named Rovan, who is riding in the car with his father, Jimmy, a man he rarely gets to see. Jimmy has taken his son with him so they can spend the summer vacation together at his new house. From the way Jimmy talks, it quickly becomes clear that he's a very strict, controlling man who still clings to old-fashioned traditions and values that most people have long left behind. In fact, those beliefs are the very reason he divorced Rovan's mother. She was an independent woman who refused to live inside the cage of outdated customs. Because of their constant conflicts, Rovan spent almost his entire life away from his father. At best, he saw him once a month, and sometimes they didn't see each other at all. Feeling a hint of guilt, Jimmy finally turns to his son and says, "Don't hold it against me, Rovan. I'm sorry I haven't called you much lately. Work and responsibilities have been taking up all my time." A short while later, they arrive at the new house. It looks peaceful and beautiful, but to Rovan, it feels strangely unfamiliar. Inside, they meet a woman named Millie, who has prepared lunch and made sure everything is ready for the arrival of her new guest, her husband's son. The moment Rovan sees her, he can't help but stare. His gaze is curious and searching, as if he's trying to read the person behind her calm expression. But before the moment can linger, Jimmy cuts in sharply. "This is Millie," he says. "She's your stepmother now, so you'll call her mom and treat her with respect. Understood?" Instead of agreeing with him, Millie gently smiles, walks over to Rovan, and says, "No, Jimmy. Let the boy be comfortable. He doesn't have to call me anything he doesn't want to. He can call me whatever feels natural. There's no need for all these formalities." After that, Jimmy takes Rovan to the guest room. Millie makes the bed herself, lays out fresh blankets, and carefully arranges everything to make him feel comfortable. With a warm smile, she says, "I heard you enjoy reading, so I got you a little gift. I hope you'll like it." Rovan thanks her for the thoughtful present, but ever since dinner, he hasn't been able to stop looking at her with those same strange, searching eyes, almost as if he has a question he can't bring himself to ask. Millie notices the way he's looking at her, but she pretends not to. She deliberately ignores it because she knows her husband is deeply religious and has a very rigid way of thinking. The last thing she wants is to create even more problems. The next morning, Jimmy takes his son with him and says something that catches Rovan off guard. "You need to stay with me all the time," he says. "We're men, and men should stick together." Then he adds, "As for Millie, she's a woman. She deserves to have her own space and be comfortable at home, so let her do whatever she wants around the house." After that, Jimmy brings Rovan to his workplace and tells him, "Starting today, you'll help me with the job until it's time for you to go back to your mother's house." Rovan doesn't argue or say a single word. He quietly follows every instruction his father gives him, all while trying to figure out how this family really works. When they return home later that day, Millie greets them with a warm smile. Dinner is already waiting on the table, hot and freshly prepared. The three of them eat in complete silence. The only sound in the room is the clinking of silverware against their plates. After dinner, Rovan heads to his room to relax. He picks up the book Millie gave him and begins reading. But only a few moments later, he suddenly hears his father's voice echoing through the house. Jimmy is yelling at his wife. The reason? She forgot to buy olives from the grocery store. Furious, he shouts, "I work all day without a moment to breathe, and this is what I come home to? You can't even prepare the meals you're supposed to make as my wife. There's always something missing in this house." Jimmy then turns to his son and says, "Whatever you do, never marry a careless woman who can't handle responsibility like Millie." Rovan is stunned by the harsh way his father speaks about his own wife, but once again, he stays silent. At that moment, everything suddenly makes sense. Now he understands why his mother eventually left Jimmy and walked away from the marriage. Trying to calm the situation, Millie quietly approaches her husband and apologizes, hoping to put an end to the argument before it gets any worse. Later that evening, after getting ready for bed, she waits for Jimmy in their room. When he finally walks in, she asks him softly, "Why would you say something like that in front of your son? What was the point?" Jimmy shrugs it off. "I didn't do anything," he replies. "Are you upset because I told the truth?" Then he adds dismissively, "Rovan's just a teenager. He won't understand any of this anyway." A little later, Millie walks to Rovan's room to check whether he's asleep. Instead, she finds him still awake, completely absorbed in the book she gave him. It seems he genuinely likes the gift. The next morning, Jimmy wakes up and discovers that Millie and Rovan have already had breakfast without him. "So you couldn't even wake me up to have coffee with you?" he asks. Then, turning to Millie, he says sarcastically, "If I had asked you to make breakfast this early, you never would have done it this fast." Millie answers calmly, "You were asleep. I didn't want to disturb you or wake you up." As usual, Jimmy takes Rovan to work with him. Later that night, after they return home, Rovan goes to bed and tries to fall asleep. But just as he's about to drift off, he begins hearing strange, muffled sounds coming from his father's bedroom. The noises make it almost impossible for him to close his eyes. He lies awake, staring into the darkness, unable to sleep until morning. The next morning, Rovan tries to help Millie set the table, but she gently stops him. "No, sweetheart," she says with a smile. "Just sit down and relax. I'll take care of everything." Rovan smiles back and replies, "It's okay, Millie. I always help my mom with things like this at home." Jimmy immediately scoffs. "That's exactly why your mother ruined you," he says. "She made you weak. She never taught you how to be a real man." This time, however, Millie refuses to stay silent. "Actually," she says, "it's important for him to learn responsibility while he's still young. That's much better than growing up lazy and expecting everyone else to do everything for him, just like his father." Jimmy freezes. His expression instantly changes. "Are you calling me lazy, Millie?" he asks angrily. Without looking away, she meets his eyes and answers with complete confidence. "Yes, Jimmy, you are." The words hit him hard. Furious, Jimmy storms out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Rovan quietly returns to his room, hoping to get away from the tension, while Millie begins clearing the dishes from the table, still thinking about everything that had just happened. A few moments later, she checks to make sure Jimmy has really left the house. Once she's certain he's gone, she walks to Rovan's room. She finds him asleep. Slowly and cautiously, she steps closer to him, almost as if she's acting on an impulse she can't control. Just then, Rovan senses someone nearby and suddenly wakes up with a start. Startled herself, Millie immediately backs away and rushes out of the room. When she returns to her own bedroom, she's left shaken by what just happened. Fear and anxiety begin to consume her as she worries that her husband might somehow discover what happened between them. That night, Jimmy finally comes home, still upset from the morning's argument. He notices that the food is still sitting on the table, untouched. Confused, he mutters to himself, "So who's really the careless one here, me or her?" When Jimmy walks into the bedroom, he finds Millie asleep, still wearing the clothes she had on all day. It immediately catches his attention. Sleeping in her daytime clothes is completely out of character for her. Curious, he walks to Rovan's room. There, he finds his son fast asleep as well, completely unaware of everything around him. The next morning, Rovan asks his father if he can return to his mother's house. Without any hesitation, Jimmy agrees. As he drives Rovan home, his tone softens. "This house is your home too," he tells him. "If you ever want to come live with us, I have no problem with that. Millie and I will always be happy to have you." But Rovan gently shakes his head. "I want to go back to my city and my friends," he says. "I'll come stay with you for a week every month so we don't lose touch." Although clearly disappointed, Jimmy accepts his son's decision. He drives him back to his mother's house and says goodbye. Meanwhile, back at the house, Millie walks into the room Rovan had been staying in. She carefully cleans it, makes the bed, and puts everything back in perfect order. When she's finished, she quietly closes the door. She wants the room to stay clean and ready, so that when Rovan returns next month, everything will be waiting for him just the way he left it. As the car pulls away, Rovan looks back at the house through the window. Silently, he says to himself, "Wait for me, Millie. I'll be back next month." With that, Jimmy continues driving, taking Rovan back to his mother's home. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.